Hi, this is Andre. I want to talk about MIDI synchronization with the Echoplex Digital Pro. Specifically, this video is going to look at having the Echoplex follow sync from an outside source. This video was commissioned by Steven Clements, so thanks very much to Steve for suggesting this. The first thing we need to do is configure the Echoplex to receive sync from an outside source. So we go down to the bottom parameter row, the insert column, and we want sync to be set in, because again, the Echoplex is going to be following sync from another source. Technically speaking, that's what's known as being a MIDI slave. Now there are three other possible parameter values for the sync parameter. Off, out, and out start song. We're not going to worry about any of those right now. We're going to stick with having the sync mode in. Now the outside sync source I'm going to be using for this video is Ableton Live. That's going to be our MIDI clock master. I programmed a really boneheaded drum machine beat, but I deliberately want it to be really simple and straightforward so that we can hear exactly what's going on. I'm going to press play and you're going to see on the front display that after one measure of that drum beat, we're going to have a loop length that's been calculated in relation to that. So here we go. And here's our new loop length. And now I'm going to start recording. If you press record when you're synced to an external source and Quantize is off, it will immediately start recording and it will go on a cycle by cycle basis. So if I hit record and then end with overdub, we have one cycle that's been calculated in relation to the drum machine pattern. So now I'm going to play. And you can hear that the loop is locked in perfectly with the Ableton drum beat. Now let's look at this in a little more detail. The eighth per cycle parameter tells you how many eighth notes are going to be in a cycle. The default setting is 8. If I turn on the drum part again, you can hear the hi-hat is on every eighth note, and we're getting eighth note displays there. So the default setting for eighth per cycle is 8. 8 eighth notes per cycle. That basically is the same as thinking of one cycle as being the equivalent of one measure of 4/4. Now if you change the eighth per cycle value, it's going to change how many of these eighth notes constitutes one cycle. So right now this is a 2.9 second loop. Let's take eighth per cycle, let's bring it down to 4. And now you're going to see that the loop length is basically half of what it was, because now we only have 4 eighth notes per cycle instead of 2. If I record a loop, you'll hear that it will only take 4 eighth notes to repeat. So you can vary how long the Echoplex loops are in relation to your clock using the eighth per cycle value. Now the default setting is 8, and as you scroll through initially, you get a lot of the most commonly used values. But once you get past 256, then the eighth per cycle value increases one at a time. So for instance, you can have the cycle length be the equivalent of 3 eighth notes. Let's fire up the drum machine again. And now you're going to hear that this is going to be phasing rhythmically because the loop length is only going to be 3 eighth notes long. That kind of idea. Let's take a quick look at the effect of Quantize on sync recording. If you start up your external sync source, and then start recording, as soon as I press record, it immediately starts recording the loop and will round up to at least one cycle. Let's try that. Now it's worth pointing out that even though I started recording at a different point, the downbeat for the loop is still being taken from the downbeat of the drum machine pattern. In other words, the MIDI clock downbeat for a measure is still being used as the beginning of the loop point. Now if you turn Quantize on, it will wait until the beginning of a measure to actually start recording. That kind of thing. That can be useful if you need to. In my case, set it up to record and then get your hands over to the Echoplex because I'm not using a foot pedal. If you want to make sure that the audio begins recording right exactly on the downbeat, that's good too. That sort of idea. Now let's look at a function called ReAlign. This lets you break synchronization with your outside clock source and then realign it to the clock source whenever you're ready. So let's set up an initial loop. Let's change the tempo just to mix it up. This was 84. Let's do something a little faster. Let's try 99. And after one measure, the Echoplex calculates the loop length. Quantize is off. Eighth per cycle is 8. So there's my initial loop. Now let's say I want to do some stuff with reverse and half speed. This kind of thing. So if I just let it play normally, you're going to hear that we've totally gotten out of sync with the drums. ReAlign will let you get back into sync. It's a two-step process. It's very straightforward. First step is press mute. Second step is press multiply. It's going to wait until the next downbeat and then start playing the loop back from scratch. Let's do that a little more. So again, I'm playing with reverse and half speed, and the purpose here is to deliberately throw the alignment of the loop off from the drum machine. So you can hear that's a little goofy right now. So first step is mute, second step is press multiply, and then it comes right in on the downbeat. This will work even if you completely stop Ableton. Let's say I want to edit my loop, work with it a little bit, but I don't want to have the drums going, and I don't want the sequencer going at all. So now I'm just overdubbing stuff. And then if we want to lock back in with the sequencer, again, it's a two-step process. Mute. Multiply. Now it's waiting for a downbeat from Ableton, and as soon as I press it, we're all synced up. Some of the timing there is a little loosey-goosey, but that's my fault. It's not a sync function, it's a sloppy playing function. Now let's look at something else. Let's look at changing where the downbeat is in relation to the MIDI clock. And specifically, let's look at evolving this loop in such a way that we no longer have the same downbeat we initially did. So I'm deliberately going to try and obscure and or forget the downbeat. Okay, let's bring feedback back up. I've definitely lost the downbeat. Let's try reversing that. Okay, now I'm going to overdub something forward so we have a more defined attack. Okay, so that last overdub I did, I want that to be the new downbeat. We're going to come down to the bottom parameter row and the start point parameter. Normally, pressing that is going to set a new start point in the Echoplex loop. What this is going to do now is redefine where the loop downbeat is in relation to the clock source. I'm going to do that by doing a long press of start point. Boom. And now you can see clock start point is telling us where that new clock point is. Now if I go into setting it up for ReAlign, it's going to kick back in at that new point that we've designated as the new downbeat. So again, our two-step process. Mute, multiply, it's waiting for a signal, press play, and now it's coming right down on that downbeat. And again, if I want to mess with it, so now it's out of sync. To fix that, mute, multiply, 3, 4, boom. So that's the idea of ReAlign. So this has been a crash course in having the Echoplex follow external MIDI clock from an outside source. There's going to be another video covering the opposite situation, having the Echoplex act as the MIDI clock master and having other things, in my case it'll be Ableton Live, follow the Echoplex. So more fun to be had with sync. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much to Steven Clements. I'm going to close out with a request that Steve made. I asked if there was anything in particular he wanted to see in the video, and he said he wanted to see 2 Echoplexes synced to the same clock source at the same time. So I have 8 per cycle set to 2 different values so that the loop lengths are going to be different. I'm going to start up Ableton Live and I'm going to let this play us out. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I will talk to you soon.